By the way, if I just start sneezing my face off, cut the GUNDACKER.
Bro, me too. I don't know why. Usually when I wake up, and I've only been up.
What's happening, Stokastic baseball fans? Terry McBride here. We were just chatting a little bit coming into the show here, getting some allergy attacks today for me. So if you hear some sniffling on the show today, apologies. If I break down into a sneeze fest, apologies. But we're here to talk about some baseball. My buddy GUNDACKER's here with me. He's got some allergies going apparently today too. So hey, we'll fight through for you guys and talk about baseball all through this hour here, leading right up to lock. Gun, how's your day going, buddy? Or what time did you wake up today?
You're about an hour ago.
All right.
Yeah,
I got you beat.
4 p.m.
I woke up about an hour and a half ago and started putting all my stuff together for this. But I was up like all last night, put together the model before I went back to sleep this morning. So basically nocturnal at this point.
Same. That's been my life for a long time.
So how was your Friday night? How'd your DFS night go? How'd your Friday go?
It went pretty solid. It would have been really nice if Ronald Acuna did not rob Pete Alonso in the first inning. That hurt, but other than that, it was a pretty solid night, man. I was happy to. Usually Friday night chaos slates, I don't have high expectations, so to walk away to profit is good, but it would have been much more if Pete Alonso's baseball left the park. Yeah.
One of those nights for me, down a little bit, but could have been, should have been, but the big slate kind of chewed me up in the end, and wasn't a brutal one. I had a couple brutal ones recently, but we got 10 games to talk about here, guys. So you don't need to hear about our results. Everybody wants to hear about what's going to happen tonight. We'll get into it. We are brought to you by Odd Shopper today, so make sure you check them out. We'll talk about them in a little bit. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. We're up to whoops, I clicked the wrong way there. We're around 386 viewers, only 63 likes to start out the show. I think we need to get at least it's 384. Let's get to 80 plus likes and we'll maybe start talking baseball here. So fire those off and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. But Gun, any overarching thoughts about the slate before we get into the specific game by game breakdown? Any weather concerns, anything that you want to bring up before we really dive in officially here?
So I think the most obvious difference is there's a 2-game difference between FanDuel and DraftKings, right? And that's pretty unique because it does include pitchers that are, obviously access to a Max Scherzer on one site and not the other site, makes it a pretty different slate and so on and so forth. So if you are a multi-site grinder, I think your lineups, especially your pitching exposure, just might look very, very different site to site.
Yeah, seems like it's going to be very different. And I'm glad you brought that up. 10 games on DK that we'll go through everything. 8 games on FanDuel because they're not including the doubleheaders today. So always interesting, always keeping us on our toes with the changes there. I just realized that I didn't actually put some of that pricing into my model here. So for the DK for those 2 games. So let me get that in here while we start out the show. But guys, appreciate everybody hanging out. Hit the like, the subscribe. We're going to dive on in. First game up on deck, Gun. The White Sox against the Rangers. Michael Kopech going for the White Sox. I'm getting a pretty nice projection on Kopech. He's at a pretty good price on that FanDuel slate. On the other side, Dane Dunning for the Rangers going up against a renewed, healthy White Sox lineup. It's not the apex form of their lineup, I don't think, but a lot of the key hitters are back and in this lineup today. So I am interested in some White Sox there. But Dane Dunning, kind of a capable pitcher. You get some games where he hits a little bit of a strikeout upside. Do you have any interest in him? And then talk to me about Kopech, because I assume you're getting to at least a little bit of Kopech in this spot.
Yeah, and I think Dane Dunning is extremely interesting. For sure, the White Sox have balanced their lineup a little bit more today. They have 4 lefties in the lineup, but I don't know that I feel like that's the most they've had all year. But Dane Dunning, if you isolate what he's done at home, it's been pretty doggone respectable. 3.64 xFIP, 23% K rate, and at 7,100. You might flip that into 2x here and there. Not an aggressive stand on him, but he's definitely in my player pool as a guy I'm hoping for, a long shot at 14 to 16, not even a long shot. And looking at our top pitcher tool, we've got him pretty obtainable. He's only projected for 3% ownership. We give him an 11% top 2 value chance and 6.5 chance of being a top 2 pitcher on the slate to begin with. So there's definitely some positive leverage baked in. And like I said, he's been pretty plus at home.
Yeah, and it's just, he's a pitcher that I think is a capable guy. He tends to keep the ball down to a decent degree, keep the ball in the yard to a decent degree. He doesn't typically get lit up. And when he finds those strikeouts, he can give you a little bit of that upside. So I'm a little curious to maybe throw some shares in there. He's 7,400 on FanDuel. I'd be limited on FanDuel, but I do think he's interesting on that DK slate for 7,100. I mean, you're talking about in our rankings. Yeah, he looks like he's down the board a little ways, but you can jump right to the middle of the board with Michael Kopech and only shave off 2 percentage points of probability of being in the top 2. If you want to go up a few further, then you're basically doubling the probability. But there's not a ton of daylight in my mind between like Dane Dunning at that price against the White Sox and say, I don't know, Nick Lodolo at 8,300 against Milwaukee. I don't really see a ton of difference between those 2 spots. So if the field's not going to be there, I'm happy to jump on some extra shares of Dunning on DK, where he's very cheap and like you said, very gettable there. So I think that's an interesting spot. What about Kopech? Are you going to any shares of him? He's getting a little bit more attention on both sides.
Yeah, kind of the same thing where if I roster him, just looking for a shot at 2x, man, 14, 16 fantasy points as an SP2. Rangers below average WRC plus against righties, and Kopech, in a weird twist of fate here, he actually strikes out lefties at a high clip this year, and the Rangers come out more lefties than righties. You've got a 27.5% carry to lefties versus just a 15% carry to righties. So might be sneaky advantageous to him. No high levels of confidence, but kind of there's going to be a pool for me of pitchers like you already mentioned, Lodolo, guys like that, that if they're less than 10% owned against an offense that we know can come out, fall flat in a plus park, as long as they got the lid on Globe Life, there's a world where he can get us a 14, 16 SP2 return. So I'm there on him, and I do like that he's throwing at least 90 or more pitches in 3 straight starts. So plenty of bullets to work with. So not an ace, not an SP1, maybe not somebody for FanDuel, but on DraftKings, I can get him in the SP2 spot in this matchup.
Yeah, and he's going to be fairly low owned on the FanDuel slate. So like I said, he's projecting out fairly well for me in this spot. I think I'll be well above the field. The field's only 2.8%, which I love because I can be well above it, 10, 12, whatever I want. So it's easy to get beyond. But what I think is interesting, I mean, Texas kind of middle of the road against right-handed pitching, actually like dead middle of the league, honestly. 102 WRC plus is 15th against righties, 21.9% strikeout rate is 16th for the active roster, 155 ISO also 16th. They had a few additional home runs with a 3.23% home run rate, which ranks 10th, but it's not anything that really scares me. I do think you can find a few strikeouts in there. It's not the safest play in the world, an 11.7% walk rate, a 4.93 xFIP. These are bad numbers. So playing with fire a little bit, but I think at that low ownership, I'm going to take some shots there, maybe a little bit more aggressively than it sounds like you're into the Kopech side of this one. What about the bats? If you're not going to Kopech here and knowing that he does put guys on aggressively with that walk rate, does allow a little bit of pop, are you going to any Rangers? And then kind of same question on the other side, since we're seeing these pitchers somewhat similarly, are you going to any White Sox stacks?
Yeah, both pitchers have underlying metrics that paint a range of outcome for failure. Specifically, we'll start with the Kopech side. 4.85 Sierra, 3.97 expected ERA. Again, the expected ERA isn't the worst, but it does leave the door open for Rangers to maybe step in and create chaos. And Kopech also has an issue with command. 14% walk rate to lefties, 10% walk rate to righties. So if the umps got a certain vision tonight and the Rangers are a little bit patient, they could create some long, stressful innings and maybe get some free base runners and open up the big innings. So I do think there's a world where this is a scumdacker spot where I have a little bit of everything, but there's not like I probably wouldn't be over 15% on any factor of the four corners there, but it's one of those games that is just could turn any which way. And if we look at the top stack tool for the Rangers, we're getting them today on DraftKings at 5% ownership. It's a little bit over our top stack percentage, but I think 5% is fair. I'd probably be a little under that. And then Chicago is coming in at just 2% ownership, which is giving us about 3% opportunity at positive leverage. And like I said, and maybe, most people still have this perception about the White Sox against righties from their entire season. They're a little bit more balanced now, and they can be a little bit more scrappy, having more lefties in that lineup. But Grandal, Moncada, Gavin Sheets, specifically, Garcia does bat lefty, but I don't really, I wouldn't really be targeting.
Yeah, nobody's looking to Larry for upside, really. Yeah, he's one of those guys where if he lands in there and he grabs you like 12 FanDuel points, you're pretty happy about it. But I'm with you on that White Sox call. I think they're the more interesting of the two stacks. I think they're a little bit more exploitable going up against Dunning, which the numbers might not bear that out. It just feels that way given Kopech's stuff. Like the upside of his stuff, if he's having a good day, I think exceeds the upside of Dunning's stuff. So I'd rather tangle that way. And I really like this White Sox roster at low ownership. Timmy Anderson up top with Eloy, Jose Abreu in there, Joan Moncada. I'm still a Yasmani Grandal fan. He's batting second, 3,600 on DK. He's drawing 8% ownership as the most popular DK player on the White Sox, but it makes sense at catcher. And he's drawing only 5%, hitting second at 2,100 on the FanDuel slate. That's a spot I'm interested in for a guy who just knows how to get on base, be a part of correlated scoring, and can hit one out of the yard. Any specific guys that you want to call out from either side?
Yeah, Corey Seager, my highest bomb rating here, 3.98 on the bomb detector. That's going to match up well with Michael Kopech's 57% fly ball rate, 23.5% line drive rate, and that 14% walk rate. So if he gets behind and counts, it does create a potential positive spot for Seager.
I like that. And I tell you what, under 10% ownership for Seager on DK as well. That's kind of an interesting spot if you're grabbing shortstop one-offs or whatever. If you got 5,000 to drop in, you're going to one of the value pitchers. That could make some sense. So definitely a good call there. Drawing a nice home run mark in my model, slightly below the magic number, but pretty close. Eloy on the other side is my game leader for the home run model for this one. Let's take a look. We'll move on to the next one. This one's coming up interestingly for me. I want to talk about this one because this is looking like a real scumdacker spot for me in a weird way. Adam Oller is projecting oddly high for me, and I don't really trust it. It's not like, super high. It's projecting for 20 and change FanDuel points, which, an average kind of a start. He's hit into the 20s in his last two starts, but we are not talking about a good pitcher here. So I don't know what's really creating it. The Giants have been doing weird things in my model lately. But what I do believe in this one is that the Giants are crushing through the top of my home run model against this guy because he's got a 6.01% home run rate over his 38 and 2/3 this year, a 6 xFIP, a 15.3% strikeout rate. Like, I do not want this guy on the mound for me, but the way it's projecting, it looks that way. And for 6,800, maybe I throw a couple shares in and just hope the aces get blown up. But what are you seeing for the actual good pitcher in this game, which is Carlos Rodon going up against the Oakland Athletics? I think this is the prime spot for pitching, probably on the entire slate.
Yeah, I'm bracing for Rodon to be my highest owned pitcher, and it looks like the slate is as well. It's one of those spots. I'll eat negative leverage on pitching on a normal day, and I'll give the field the negative leverage on stacks. Pitching a little bit more predictive. 51% ownership on DK. I'll probably be around that number. Potentially come in, I'll land a little bit higher. Max Scherzer exists, right? And he has as much ceiling as any pitcher, at least on the DraftKings slate. But his matchup is a lot tougher perceptually. So Rodon for me is the ace of the slate, and I'll win with the bats.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just worth eating the chalk on that, especially on the FanDuel site where you don't have the Max Scherzer option, is that other like Apex starter to pivot those shares to. So I think you just kind of eat the chalk. If you want to undercut, if it's 43%, you want to go 30 somewhere around there, I'm perfectly fine with that. But yeah, it's the Apex, it's the absolute peak spot in terms of talent, in terms of matchup. Everything about it is just, great. 31.9% strikeout rate going up against a team that's, essentially a double A lineup at this point. So I am happy to go there. Would you roster any shares of Aller at 5,700 on the DK slate, given that the Giants have not been great lately, have been striking out lately? I mean, I don't believe in it, like I said, but it is coming through the old model here a little weird.
No.
Good answer. Good answer.
So we both have home run models. The entire Giants lineup is above 4, which is my magic number for me.
Okay, good. So we're seeing that exactly the same then, because the entire Giants lineup is above 10, except for Joey Bart and Tommy La Stella, who are at 9 and change in my model, 10 being the magic number in my model. So we're seeing that the same way. I'm glad I'm not crazy that there's just something wonky with how the Giants are impacting these pitchers lately. So talk to me about the Giants bats. Anybody specifically that you're like really targeting aggressively ahead of the field? You're just kind of going along with the field's ownership. Is this one of your key stacks for the day?
Yeah, definitely a key stack when the entire lineup is projected. And usually when I have marks like this, I don't know if you can relate, it's usually based on like 3-5 innings from the pitcher. We've got 38 innings from Aller here. We got enough. Obviously, more, we want more, but 38 innings isn't nothing. And these are just incredibly high marks for me. So specifically Jock Peterson in the leadoff spot sounds like a ton of fun. The highest grade in my bomb detector is Brandon Belt. But there's no one off limits here. They are in Oakland. It is more of a pitcher park here, but it's also one of those sneaky day games where we don't really realize that on the East Coast, but it is the middle of the day. So maybe the ball carries a little bit more. And yeah, the Giants look really juicy in our top stack tool. We're getting them at 9% ownership. That's probably more than you would ever really want the Giants to be, especially if they, tend to platoon their lineup. But I can't look away from these incredible marks. I mean, we make models for a reason. So slightly negative leverage, but as long as it's below 10% on a slate like this, I'm in.
Yeah, and I love their stack score in the Stokastic Stacks tool on both sites. The stack score looks very good. The leverage, they're under-owned, in my opinion, even though they're drawing some attention. And a lot of that weight, like if you look on the DK slate, 13% to Belt, 13% to Luis Gonzalez, 10% on Jock, 10% on Yaz. I mean, those are playable numbers. Those aren't egregious. On the FanDuel slate, it's really Belt and Jock are drawing a ton of ownership, and then everybody else is in the single digits. So I consider them very playable. And then on FanDuel, you even get the bonus. Everybody is 3,000, below 3,000 and cheap. So that's a target stack for me. I'll have tons of Giants tonight, I think. What about the Athletics on the other side? Any hedge stacks against the Rodon ownership? Any just contrarian stacks for the Athletics?
I mean, if you are maybe a high with your risk tolerance, you're running 150. There's always a case to have some stacks against a 50% owned pitcher, just in case.
Fair. But one of the best lefties in the league, this lineup. Yeah, exactly. I think you could have stopped it. I think you could have stopped your answer right if you're high. That would have been sufficient to answer that question.
If that's your process, high, you
can play the
I would understand if you just like second against 50% owned pitchers, but yeah. This team sucks. So I tend to not.
They're just so bad. I might get to a few shares of them just like you said, because of the way the model works, because of the way the leverage works through everything in the sorting process. But it is not a team I want to get to. It's not a team I'm excited about. Is there any one individual hitter you want to call out from their lineup for anybody who is going there?
Chatty Pendergrass, 213 ISO against lefties. And I guess Sean Murphy. If I had to get to a lane, it would be Pinder, Murphy, Laureano, but I probably won't.
Yeah, that would be the 3-man I would grab there as well, and it would really only be about those 3 guys. Saw a rumor before the trade deadline that the Yanks were in on Sean Murphy as part of the Montas trade. I would have liked to have picked him up. I like him as a catcher, nice little power bat, but
he's thick.
Yeah, but we'll get by with our Higgy and our Trevino. Since I said that I didn't really believe in Jose Trevino, I think he's hit another 3 home runs, so that's solid. He's so
likable, Terry. How?
Oh, I like him. It's just that I don't really believe in that. Yeah. What we've seen out of the bat. Let's move on here. We can't chew up too much time. We do have 10 games on the DK slate to go through. So Red Sox against the Royals. We'll knock this one out. Then we'll talk a little business. Red Sox with Eovaldi on the hill. decently cheap, 7,300, 10% owned on DK, 8,300 on the FanDuel slate. Not drawing much ownership there either. It's an okay matchup going against the Royals. And then the Royals have Daniel Lynch on the mound, not drawing any kind of ownership going up against this Red Sox team. Kind of a lousy lefty in my mind. You going to either pitcher?
You still kind of like Eovaldi's kind of got a Lance Lynn cloak on him right now, where you want to believe in his upside, and certainly against a Royals team and Coffin with a ton of strikeout potential. But Eovaldi has lost 2 miles an hour on that fastball since coming back, and we've seen a couple of bumpy spots for him. So it's one of those spots at 7,300. I get it, and we know that the upside that is there, and 20 plus against the Astros, that's easier said than done. So I do think there's merit into getting to Eovaldi, but I'm not super comfortable with it because he's always been a velocity guy, and if he doesn't have velocity, I'm scared. We got him at 10% ownership. That matches the 10% top 2% chance of being a top pitcher from the Department of Redundancy department. So I think that's fair to match that. But if it got higher than 10, I would probably sit it out.
Yeah, I think that's a fair call. He is going up against the Kansas City Royals lineup that does have some strikeouts in it. So maybe he finds a few additional strikeouts. But yeah, the concern is about the velo. Like you said, if that's down, that really impacts the way that all of his stuff works. We see his strikeout rate dip a little bit. We've seen the swinging strikes right around where it was actually 12.7, 12.6 last year. So with looking at his xFIP 3.37 against a 4.11 ERA, there are indicators under the covers that maybe he's finding his way, or maybe he's just gotten a little bit unlucky along with some of the decreased velo. But if he's not finding the strikeout upside, I'm not really a huge believer. At 7% ownership, I probably will have some shares because he projects out okay for me, but it's not one of my favorite spots on the slate. What about the Lynch side? Is there any love for Daniel Lynch going up against the Sox here?
Not really, man. That 1.5 whip, 4.2 expected ERA. I'll chill on that.
Yeah, 22.9% strikeout rate is all right, but 9.4% walk rate against this Sox team, 1.55 whip, like I said. I just think he's going to yield too much opportunity to a heavily right-handed lineup with a decent amount of power in it. So with that in mind, are the Red Sox a target for you? Because they're coming up decently projected, middle of the road in terms of my home run model, but they're pulling a ton of ownership here against Daniel Lynch. So it might push them down in my sorting process. How much Red Sox stacks are you getting to?
Yeah, so pre-flop, I like the Red Sox a lot. When we look at the ownership on them, it's you look at the highest owned team on a big slate, and you start wanting to use that as a chance to undercut the field. But I get it. Not only is the matchup great against Lynch, it's 97 degrees, which is actually hotter than where I'm at, and that never happens. So Kaufman could play much more hitter friendly in this temperature. So I think Red Sox, if you just match up the matchups, Pham, Devers, Bogarts, Verdugo, JD Martinez all look pretty good. JD, of course, drawing my highest home run number. But it's hard not to like him pre-flop, but I would understand the strategy behind undercutting the highest owned stack on the slate.
Yeah, and again, it's another one where I've said this a few times already, and I'll say it a few times probably more, where I'll have some, but I think I want to be a little bit below the field, even though I do think it's a great spot. And there are some spots in there that I think I can get to, that are a little bit lower owned, like a Bobby Dahlbeck I'll always go to with his power upside. I know he hasn't really shown us much this year, but I'll continue to go back to that because of the price, because he's a little bit lower owned than some of these guys, and he makes things work. On both slates, Alex Verdugo is hitting cleanup for 2,800 on DK, 2,500 on FanDuel, and not drawing all that much attention comparative to his teammates. So I think that's interesting, despite the lefty. And if we're thinking that Daniel Lynch gets blown up, well, now he's getting into a pretty lousy Kansas City bullpen here. So I like that spot for Alex Verdugo as another hitter. So I think it's a little bit more interesting. Like, I'd be more inclined to grab shares of Alex Verdugo as a little pay up for 800 more than Christian Arroyo at double the ownership. So I think there's some interesting spots there. What about on the Royals side of anything of the equation here? It does look like they're drawing some love against Eovaldi. Are you going to any Royal stacks?
Yeah, I mean, it's hot on both sides, and Eovaldi's, like we said, a fastball velocity. It's easier to catch up to. Now, Eovaldi has, thrown a much wider pitch mix more recently, especially this year. But the Royals still have some talent here. Melendez, Witt, Salvi, Pasquantino. I like that 1 through 4. Like this, like the temperature. I will get to them. What are we at on ownership? We're at 8% ownership. It's
reasonable.
Yeah, it's reasonable. Negative leverage, but still sub 10%. I'll take some shots on the best game environment. I think the most annoying thing with this stack is you like Melendez and you like Salvador Perez, and well, I guess Melendez is outfield eligible on DK now. I didn't catch that. So
yeah, there you go. That's handy.
Is that new?
I think so. It's the first I've noticed it, but I'm more of a FanDuel guy, so it might have slipped past on the last couple of slates. But that's helpful over there for sure. Because now you can put together the Melendez, Sal. They have first base and outfield eligibility on Nick Prado, so you can shift things around there. There's actually a lot of positional flex in this lineup now on DK. Kind of like DK. That. That's
see you.
That's upside, and everybody under that $5,000 mark, so there's some value in that. Nick Prado hitting 6th, dead minimum price on DK, drawing 5% ownership, first base and outfield eligible. This is one of their premier prospects. He's drawing a nice little mark in my home run model. 2,300 on FanDuel. I would not skip Nick Prado if you're stacking a bunch of Royal stacks. Like, make sure he's in a fair amount of them, because that's a kid. It's another one who he hasn't shown us much at the major league level over 63 plate appearances. He's 192, 317, 346 with 1 home run, but they believe in the bat. I think it's there. So at that price, I can make sure to include him. Any other bats specifically that you want to call out here?
Let's see. Bomb detector wise, Shady's at the top. Then it's Dalbec, then Salvi, then Xander.
Okay. Like it. It's a lot of lean into the Red Sox side there. I'm getting still Rafi Devers, despite the lefty top of the board for me, over 10. And then looks like MJ Sal after that. Or no, excuse me, MJ, JD, then Sal, if we're going in order. So let's knock out some business here. We covered that game. Then we'll get to one of the games that's only on the DK slate. What were we supposed to talk about? I mentioned the likes, the free stuff, but I didn't actually read the plug here. So let's knock that out. Give us a like and a subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, and giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit the notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. This week's free premium tools and data is our DraftKings MLB Night Owl, which will be free the rest of the MLB season. Click the link in the video description below to get free access to all of our tools and projections for the MLB DFS night slates. And I left this one on the table as well. This is what we're supposed to be talking about right now. Puppy 3 with preseason, Underdog. You guys like puppy best ball contests on Underdog? Well, they've got Puppy 3 starting up. They've launched it. It's you want to reserve your spot quickly before it fills up. We're offering $1 weekly access to the Stokastic, almost said it, to the Stokastic Best Ball Kit through Tuesday, August 9th, $8.99 off the original weekly price. That includes best ball and season-long fantasy football rankings. So it's draft season. It's definitely best ball season. People have been drafting best ball for months now, but jump in now. We're knocking $8.99 off the original price for that weekly package. So make sure you take advantage of that. To activate the offer, use promo code PUPPY3 with it's the word puppy all in caps with the number 3 at checkout, or just click the link in the video description below and it'll fill that in for you. That's promo code PUPPY3 for a $1 weekly best ball draft kit from our experts that will help give you an edge on the competition. Also, check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well. The NFL preseason, the NFL preseason is also kicked off, which means we have preseason DFS projections. We're giving them to you for only $1 through August 10th. You can find the link to that also down in the description below. Use promo code preseason, all in caps, to get preseason NFL projections for $1 through August 10th. Whew, that was a long one. All right.
You did good. I'm chat. Thumbs up. If you haven't hit that thumbs up yet, do it now.
Yeah. There you go. Hit the thumbs up. Forget the baseball analysis. Hit the thumbs up for the plugs. Let's talk about a game that's only exists on the DK slate. Good pitching matchup here. Braves Mets divisional matchup, rivalry game. The Braves have Max Fried going lefty, not drawing a ton of ownership, 9,500, maybe because it's an inflated price comparative to some of the other like mid-range pitchers on the board. And then Max Scherzer drawing nearly 50% ownership for 10-6. Talk to me about Fried, and we'll roll that right into Max.
Yeah, Max Fried coming in at just 8% ownership, one of the more trusty names with some positive leverage, going to be in the shadows of Max and Rodon. So definitely can make a case here. Neither like, this is probably a scumdacker spot where both really good pitchers, both pretty decent offenses, both offenses in their split today above league average and WRC plus. But both guys can eat innings, and a guy like Max Fried has a massive ground ball rate that can get through some of these better Mets bats, and maybe he steals enough strikeouts through and through at 9,500. If you roster him, you're kind of hoping he can jump one of Rodon or Scherzer in fantasy points, or maybe even match, or come within plus minus 3-4. But I do like the fact that he's coming with some positive leverage. So we'll take positive leverage where we can get it on big slates, and
for sure.
I'm at 12%. So I'm kind of in the middle of the projected ownership in the top 2%.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think that's around where you want to be on that spot, because you don't want to attack the Mets overly aggressively. But Max Fried, definitely a good pitcher overall. Like you mentioned, the ability to suppress the power, suppress the upside. A 1.14% home run rate is excellent, over 132 and a third this year. Last year, 2.25 over 165 and 2/3 in 28 starts. Just a good pitcher. 23.1% strikeout rate. There's nothing to quibble with in his numbers. He's not the absolute, shark out there who's going to go out and strike out 10 guys every time. He's not the guy he's facing. He's not Scherzer, but he's a very capable pitcher, and he could give you that good enough game to get through. And if the top end goes pop, I think he could certainly be the guy. What about Max on the other side, drawing a ton of ownership, but kind of obviously totally worth it. Good strikeout matchup, despite everything the Braves do well in terms of creating runs and power. They definitely strike out a decent amount. So how much Max are you getting to here relative to that big number for the field?
Yeah, I'm much slower than my Rodon ownership. I'm about 30%, so that's going to undercut the field by like 20%.
Is that a deliberate choice that you made when you started building lineups, or is that something that kind of came through via happenstance?
It just happened based on the projection. I think for me, Rodon actually comes in a little bit cheaper, so I get to pinch pennies a little bit for certain bats, and then the matchup for Rodon against Oakland just is better. So better matchup, $1,100 discount. I'm taking it. So I obviously Max Scherzer has probably the highest ceiling on the slate when he's on, and this is a very meaningful game in the NL East. Both pitchers going to be playing with a lot of pep here. 31% K rate. There's really no pushback other than he's ridiculously high owned at 50%. Big time upside, but the matchup is tough.
Yeah, but putting them side by side with Rodon is obviously the right way to compare it. They're the two aces on the slate. And like you mentioned, since you get that discount for Rodon on the price in a much, much better matchup, like I said, the Braves do strike out, but they hit for a massive amount of power. They're very good at creating runs when they do make contact. So I agree with you. I think that if I asked you the question, but whether it was a deliberate decision or whether it comes through happenstance, they're both perfectly valid answers for how we do things here. And I think that would have been the deliberate decision that I would have made, to say, hey, let's lean into that Rodon side, because it's not like you're getting it where he's coming up 60% owned by the field and Max is at 30% for the higher price, the worst matchup. They're coming up around the same kind of ownership. So you might as well take the discount in the better matchup there. I agree with that, while still, of course, rostering a ton of Max Scherzer where you can. You mentioned maybe a scumdacker spot here. Two good lineups. Talk to me about some of the specific bats that you like in these two sides.
Yeah, it's certainly not a comfort spot to pick on Max Scherzer, but you don't have to give up a ton of equity to kind of do it. The Braves are talented enough that you want to get some exposure to them. I mean, Acuna, Swanson, Olsen, Riley, Rosario. This lineup is Adrian's. I guess it's the only day off, you would say. Even Michael Harris, he's crushing it right now. Sam went over the wall yesterday. There's a lot of talent on this team to be 1% owned. So I'm there on that, and I don't have to give up much to be there. And then the Mets, I'm actually less enthusiastic about the Mets stack just because of Fried's ridiculous ground ball rate, and their bullpen's pretty good. At least with Max, historically, his fastballs can leave a couple over, 1.5 homer per 9 to lefties. And to righties, he's been really dominant, but still not a ground ball pitcher. It's going to be a fly ball guy. I think I think Max is more likely to give up 3 homers than Fried is.
I think that's fair. I mean, it's borne out in the numbers over time. 2.31% home run rate for Max is certainly very good this year, 3.32 last year. But if you remember the numbers I just said for Fried before, that's about double what Fried does. So yeah, he's the guy who keeps the ball down a little bit more. Makes some sense. If you are going to Mets bats, though, who do you like from the team? I mean, there's a couple obvious stars around Lindor and Pete Alonso. Who else are you looking at from that Mets lineup when you do go there?
Yeah, Marte, for starters,
Sure.
batting 300 against lefties from the beginning of last year, and he was one of the league leaders in infield hits last year. So high ground ball rate,
Makes sense.
put pressure on the defense. Maybe he gets on. They added Darren Ruff, but Eduardo Escobar has been sneakily one of the best lefty masters in the league this year. So 252 ISO since the beginning of last year against lefties. He might be somebody that can surprise you at a less obvious name value.
Yeah, a guy that typically gets slept on in that lineup quite a bit. You see when he does go off, he's usually at low ownership. So I agree. It kind of cuts off around the Canha, Guillaume, and Tomas Nito part of the lineup there for me. So maybe it's a 1 through 6 if you're stacking it. Let's move on. We are we're making okay time, I think, but we got to talk fast. Blue Jays against the Twins. Mitch White going for the Blue Jays. He's a Blue Jay now. Dylan Bundy on the hill for the Twins. Neither of these pitchers drawing any ownership. 2 power pack lineups. Are you going to either one of these pitchers for any reason?
That's going to be a 1074 rubber ducky.
All right, let's talk bats because these bats are coming up for me. The Blue Jays are really interesting on the FanDuel slate. They're not drawing the ownership that I thought they would, except for Vladdy Guerrero. He's pushing it up a little bit. Everybody else in the single digits. DK, they're drawing a little bit more attention, but I think they're really targetable here. Twins on the other side, not as popular, but no, I got to correct that. On DK, not as popular. On FanDuel, more popular. So you get in opposite situations. What are you doing with these 2 stacks?
Yeah, and that's a byproduct of having 2 less games, 4 less teams. Yeah, I mean, if we're not touching pitching, that clearly means we should probably consider bats. Blue Jays put George Springer on the IL. I thought they would have let off Merrifield, but instead they're throwing out Lord Escorial in the leadoff spot. So kind of a weird lineup with just one lefty. But Dylan Bundy still targetable with righties, 4.25 xFIP, a 1.4 homer per 9 this season against righties, and he doesn't put the ball on the ground very often. 33.8% ground ball rate against righties. So, yeah, you're gonna let them put the ball in the air and make contact. This is a great spot for the Blue Jays. The ownership is probably where it's appropriately. I don't know what that sentence was. It started good, but then ownership's appropriate.
Seems about right. But I do think there are some targetable spots in that lineup where it's actually kind of low. Like Lourdes Gurriel, good hitter up in that top leadoff spot in general, 312, 364, 425 this year, creating runs 23% better than average, drawing 5% ownership for 3,800 on DK, 3% for 2,900 on FanDuel. Happy to go there. Weird one with Alejandro Kirk in the 3 spot. He's drawing a ton of catcher attention on DK. But if you go down lineup a little bit, Matt Chapman, guy's still got a ton of power, 21 home runs this year. He keeps on doing it. 232 ISO, 120 WRC plus, 52.2% hard hit, 14.7% barrel rate. Both of those marks lead this team. He's drawing 2.3% ownership at third base for 4,600 on DK, 2% for 3,500 on FanDuel. People sleep on Matt Chapman just constantly all throughout this year. I'm pretty happy to go there. So I'll be getting the additional shares of him. And then Whit Merrifield, who you mentioned, multi-position eligible on both sites, super cheap, hitting 7th. It's not ideal, but I think this is a lineup that plays 1 through 9 today. Would you roster is there anybody that you wouldn't roster in this lineup?
For the Blue Jays? Yeah. No. Yeah. I guess
dual catchers too. You got,
I was going to say, I guess
there. It's kind of
you'd have to flip a coin between Jansen and Kirk, but I think Kirk wins that 90% of the time.
Yeah, makes sense. What about on the Twins side of things? A couple big bats in that lineup as well, going up against Mitch White, who's not a bad pitcher necessarily, but decidedly average, I think, at this point. So are you throwing Twins bats at Mitch White here?
Yeah, the Byron Buxton version of the Twins lineup is my favorite version. Correa, Buxton, Polanco, Kepler. That's a really nice lane. Mitch White does not really strike out lefties this year, 14.5% K rate. To his credit, it's not like he has a massive home run problem, but if you read between the lines, man, still a 20% line drive rate to righties and a 42% fly ball rate. The hard contact's been kind of saving him, but there is some room perhaps for home run progression if you put him in more hitter-friendly stuff. We know Target Field can get wonky at times versus maybe Dodger Stadium at night. So I do think there's certainly some merit for the Twins here, and there's a pretty balanced lineup to attack. Not as deep as the Blue Jays, I would say, but I could run a couple combos in 1 through 5 and feel all right.
Yeah, I probably cut off around 6 with Jose Miranda, who's not drawing any attention despite being a pretty premium bat in that lineup, multi-position eligible and cheap on both sides, first base, third base. I do like Miranda in there. I might grab a couple shares of super cheap Nick Gordon because he slots in at shortstop and outfield on FanDuel. You get multi-position Luis Arias. It's just an interesting team because of the way they kind of click together in some slates. So I'm sure I'll have a bunch of Twins, but I don't think I'm going to have that much Jake Cave and Sandy Leon down the bottom of the lineup here. So probably cuts off around 7 for me, but 1 through 7 look pretty stackable. I'll have lots of both sides of this game. Let's move on to our New York Yankees. Then we'll knock out the odd shopper plug. Yanks going up against their former teammate here, Jordan Montgomery. Yanks throwing Domingo Germán at the cards here. I'm not really going Germán. I believe much more in this Cardinals lineup than I do in his stuff over time or in general. Just not a real fan of this guy. I wish he wasn't on our team, to be honest. Jordan Montgomery, I do like, but not against the Yankees. Lefty against this Yankees lineup, probably not the greatest spot. No Rizzo in the lineup for the Yanks today, but it is a decent at least 1 through 6. So talk to me about the pitching matchup. You getting any shares of either of these pitchers?
No. And yeah, I'm with you. Germán, 3-pitch pitcher, probably more suited for a bullpen. Below average fastball, leans a lot on the curveball, and then has an 86-mile-an-hour changeup. So I don't expect him to really blow by these Cardinals. Does have close to 11% swing and strike rate, and I think that's the product of the breaking ball. But ultimately, so far, just a 15% K rate. And when he gives up homers, he gives them up in bunches. So I'm certainly with you on liking the Cardinals more than Domingo Germán here, and we get the Cardinals at just 2% owned versus a 5% chance of being a top stack. Certainly room in my portfolio to get there. And yeah, this Cardinals lineup is stacked.
Yeah, it's a team I definitely want to go to. We'll go through that lineup, and there's some cheap spots. There's some low-owned spots like you called out. There's some expensive spots too. $6,100 Paul Goldschmidt on the DK slate. Not cheap, but the bats around him are affordable enough, and they're all low-owned. What about Jordan Montgomery going up against the Yankees lineup? Kind of wish we still had him instead of Domingo Germán, but hey, we've got Harrison Bader on the IL.
What a trade. When that trade happened, I
still don't understand.
Montgomery had like plantar fasciitis, and I thought it sounded like he was going to be out for a while, but here he is making his next start. Right. So I just don't understand. Yeah, I don't understand it.
Yeah, one of the longer tenured guys on the team, capable lefty pitcher for years. I really don't get it, but hey, he's pitching for the Cards today against the Yanks. Are you getting any shares of him for DFS purposes? Reasonable price for a talented guy, but not really a DFS target most of the time.
Yeah, much better real life pitcher than fantasy, slate breaker pitcher. Maybe he's got a little spunk. I don't know. Where's Sean V at? Is this the revenge game of the century with one of the greatest catchers of all time calling him? Maybe, but I'm more so thinking the Yankees know what he's got and what he doesn't have, and I don't like to pitch against the Yankees unless the dude has ridiculous K numbers.
Especially with a lefty. I mean, you're just asking for trouble there. I do like Montgomery. He's not a target for DFS. That is an interesting point, though. It will be fun to watch what Yadi can unlock from him and see if there's any additional upside there. If we're going to Yankees bats, everybody, it seems, around the industry in general has finally noticed that Aaron Judge is on a historic home run pace. There were a bunch of articles about it the last 2 or 3 days. He's obviously a masher. 5,300 now on FanDuel, $6,000 on DK, 100 cheaper than Paul Goldschmidt on the other side. Well, outside of Judge, what other Yankees are you going to? Because everybody's pretty low owned on both sides.
Yeah, Donaldson had a pair of doubles yesterday. I think he had 3 hits ultimately, or should have had 3 hits. So maybe he's finding something. We like him historically more against lefties. I do like the FanDuel price for him more than the DK price. Glaber's in the mix. And then, Matt Carpenter's still there. And if Jordan Montgomery is not long for this one, and even if he is, Carpenter's shown some power against lefties. I like them. I like Hicks turned around as well, but a little bit less. My favorite would be 1 through 6. And anytime my boy Tim LeCastro's in the lineup, I got to call him out. Fastest guy in the league almost. And if he gets on, I'm ready to see him versus Yachty if it gets to that.
I was hoping you'd say that because I think the last time you called out Timmy LeCastro in a game that we were on a show together a couple weeks ago, he put up a 30-point night that night. So I'll make sure I have a few shares of him at the dead minimum, maybe a couple shares of Higgy. I think this lineup plays 1 through 9 as long as we're skipping Isaiah Kiner for Levitt in the 7 spot because I do not really believe in him in terms of DFS or regular baseball, to be quite honest. What about the Cards on the other side? We just mentioned it before. Excellent lineup, low owned going up against a punching bag of a pitcher. I assume you're getting the Cards over the field here.
Yeah, Germán's very beatable, and then our historical calling card for the Yankees is usually how great our bullpen is, but it's not that right now. Even Clay Holmes came in yesterday, and he's been in a really tough stretch, and he looked not good yesterday. I doubt he comes out today after throwing 25 pitches yesterday. And it might be an Aroldis Chapman, Lucas Licky, Wandy Peralta night. And that's more lefties against Goldie and Arenado. So it could be a long day for Yankees pitching.
Yeah, I agree with that. That Yankees closer spot is going to be dicey. I think we might see Lou Trevino in that spot at some point, because he's a capable guy and hasn't done it this year. But if they can fix that sinker and everything that he's got, that might get interesting. Let's move on from this one. Let me knock out a couple pieces of business. We're probably a little bit behind here. Odd Shopper, you guys know about Odd Shopper. You love it. You're probably using it, but if you're not, make sure you're getting over there. If you're betting player props, if you're making bets of any kind, this is the edge that you need. It's going to help you find the best spots to make those bets. So it's not like we're going in there and we're saying, hey, what you wanted to bet on is dumb, and this is what you ought to bet on. What we're saying is, hey, you like that bet a lot. It works through our tools and everything at the site. This is the best out of all the sports books to make it at. This is the spot where you're getting it at the best price. Gives you the best edge you need in betting player props and game lines across all sports. You can sign up for free right now via the link in the video description down there. It's got expected win percentages. It's got ROIs. It uses the same tools and proprietary data that create the DFS projections at Stokastic. It's so worth checking out, guys. Odd Shopper, 2 S's in the middle, link from the top of the Stokastic site, linked in the description below. Stokastic plus MLB. I'm just going to knock this one out now too, so we can just fire through these next games. You guys know about the different subscriptions at the site now. You've heard me talk about them. You know that we have the platinum plan that includes just everything at the site, every single sport. We've got football coming up. We've got golf going on, NASCAR, MMA, baseball, of course. All of that is in the platinum plan. So if you want to get access to everything, subscribe to the platinum plan. It's got some great affordable pricing. It includes the projections, ownership projections, lineup builder, Discord, everything, all the top pitchers, top stacks, top this, top that type tools. Too many T's in there that we talk about on these shows. So you can get access to that. If you're a new Stokastic user, you can save 50% on your first week of any Stokastic Plus plan. So including the platinum plan with promo code MLB Live. If you only want MLB, subscribe to the MLB weekly plan for 50% off with the same promo code. Pretty easy, guys. Check it out. Join Stokastic Plus today. That's all the plugs. That's all the business for the day. So we can just talk baseball the rest of the way through. We've got 4 games to go. We've got the Cincinnati Reds coming up against the Milwaukee Brewers. This looks like an interesting spot. Brewers pulling through decent home run marks in my model, but I do think Nick Lodolo is an interesting pitcher on the mound on the other side. So it's a spot I might scumdacker a little bit, get both sides of that one. Ashby on the mound for the Brewers going up against the Reds, I think is targetable here as well. I don't know how much Reds bats I get, so maybe 3 out of 4 for me here. What are you doing with this game?
Yeah, this is the pitchers come at a little bit of risk. Both pitchers have a near aggregate 1.5 WHIP, but they give you that 30% K rate, and that dog will hunt for tournaments. So I do like the thought of both pitchers ceiling. So immediately when I see a 30% K rate, we got to check the ownership. Lodolo 60% owned, 16% owned. And then
slight difference.
Yeah, and then Ashby a little higher owned at 28%, getting probably the largest, the third largest negative leverage score past Scherzer and Rodon. So there is a little bit of grit your teeth if you want to get there, but the ceiling is there. And then the Reds are somehow worse than they were a week ago overall, and not a ton of power. So if you're willing to maybe wrestle with some high walk rates, both pitchers do have some ceiling at their price point with a 30% K rate worth getting to. Obviously with that ownership in mind, Lodolo seems a little more fun for tournaments, but I wouldn't fault you for getting to some Ashby as well. I have some Ashby, not nearly 30% though.
Yeah, I would be under the field on the Ashby shares there. Lodolo's my preferred side of this one as well, despite the fact that I think the Brewers are clearly the better lineup. They're drawing more better projections. They're drawing more home run upside for me. I just believe in the Lodolo side of this a little bit more than I think the Ashby side of it, and he's showing a little bit better numbers in a shorter sample. You mentioned the Reds lost probably their best bat this season in Brandon Drew, who's on a team we'll talk about in a minute. But are you going to any Red stacks here against Ashby, knowing that he puts some guys on, can give up the long ball from time to time? Or is there any love for this Reds team for you?
Maybe a sub stack, but yeah, it's hard to get 5 deep in this stack and feel great about it. Even losing Pham and Drury against a lefty would be a place I want to be. Kyle Farmer, one of the best hitting catchers that most people don't know about, batting third, maybe that's a decent spot. India, sure, but for the most part, if I got here, it would probably not be more than 3.
Yeah, super cheap. Nick Senzel if you want him at 2,200 hitting second, but meh. Not a lot to love there. Maybe some Aristides Aquino is a one-off if you want to go super cheap again with a guy with a touch of home run upside, but it's not really coming through. The Brewers, I've mentioned a couple times, look good in my model. What are you seeing for the Brewer side of this one?
Yeah, a couple of marks in the home run model for me that are pretty high. The one thing that does stand out to me about the Brewers lineup versus the Reds lineup is that they actually strike out more. And based on the confirmed lineups here, I'm getting a lot of guys 20% to 30%, whereas on the Reds, I actually get 4 or 5 guys under 20% against lefties. So the upside for strikeouts is higher with this Brewers lineup, but they put the Reds in a coffin when it comes to ISO. So certainly a more dangerous lineup, like you said, but maybe a little bit more strikeout potential. If I had to land on a couple bats to pick to grab, and I will, and I actually have 5-man Brewers aspirations tonight. Willie Adames, McCutchen, Renfroe, guys that stand out to me. Mike Brosseau is really fun, but he might be a Darren Ruff type, which I don't know if he's going to get subbed out. As soon as
2-3 plate appearance type, if depending on how things go, probably. But you might get that home run out of them there for 2,100 and under 5% ownership on both sides, 2,900 on the DK slate, multi-position. I love that call. I think Brosseau's totally interesting there. I'll go with Hunter Renfroe, Kiston Hiura, Luis Urias down the bottom of the lineup. Hell, even Victor Caratini and Tyrone Taylor are somewhat interesting for super cheap if you're stacking this team fully. So it's another one lighter on those two guys at the bottom end, but 1 through 7, I think I'm going to be pretty aggressive with these Brewers because there's not a lot of ownership and they come through the model nicely for me. Let's move on so that we make sure we cover each of these games appropriately. The Colorado Rockies against the Arizona Diamondbacks, everybody's favorite 2 teams. Antonio Sensatella against Meryl Kelly. Kelly looks okay. He's projecting out for about the same kind of ownership, similar pricing on both sides. Sensatella looks like nothing worth rostering whatsoever. Any disagreement on Sensatella? And then how much Meryl Kelly are you getting to here?
Yeah, no disagreement at all on Sensatella. He's on my do not roster list.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a 1 game slate. Even then, I don't know. Meryl Kelly,
hit my head pretty hard to even need to look at that list to know that I wouldn't want to roster him. But yeah.
I like Meryl Kelly. I think the pushback is he's not that far from Max Fried, and higher than guys like Lodolo, and he certainly doesn't have the same strikeout upside as a Lodolo, but he is just one of those inning eater safe guys that can get you a strikeout 1 in every 5 at bats. So I certainly don't mind getting there, but I typically don't expect the world, and maybe modestly 16 to 18, and that's usually not something that blows me away. But Rockies on the road, was it you that hit me with the 3 R's that kind of stuck with me? Was it Rockies against a righty on the road?
Rockies against a righty on the road, always targeting.
That's beautiful. And Meryl Kelly has shown a propensity, at least lately, that 20 plus isn't out of the range of outcomes. And he's actually put up 26 fantasy points in 2 games against the Rockies here. So it's certainly there for him to have a really strong game. So I do have Meryl Kelly in the blender. We got 11% ownership on him. That's about his top pitcher opportunity.
Yeah, he looks like he's kind of efficiently owned, I think, by the field. But I think it's worth taking at least drawing a few shares of. I kind of wish he was a little lower priced because he's most likely going to give you that mid-range game. So he'd be a lot more effective as like a high-priced SP2 on DK. And I guess at 9K you can call him that, but I wish he was in that like 8,300 Evaldi tier. Copay, that's the FanDuel price. 7,300 would probably be too cheap for him here. The 8,300 Lodolo Ashby tier. If he was in that tier, I think he'd be a lot more interesting.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do feel like he's about $1,000 too expensive. But hey, maybe on FanDuel where you don't have the max, you know what I'm saying? You don't have that upside max and Fried. He is more of a FanDuel guy as an inning eater and scoop up that quality start guy where you don't really need to wait strikeouts as much if you can scoop a quality start and a win. So might be a fun click over there.
That's a good call. Yeah. 11% owned, it's 9,800, 11% from Meryl Kelly. It sounds weird in my head as I'm saying it out loud, but I do think there's some justification there to chase that quality start. And without Max, if you get Rodon going pop up at the top of that slate, it is anyone's ball game with the rest of the pitching on there. So what about bats in this one? Any love for either side here? I'm not probably going to get to much of the Rockies because of what we just said about their performance. Maybe a few sneak through, but I'd probably have a few shares of the Diamondbacks, but I think below the field looks like the field's getting aggressive on the D-backs. So what are you doing with the bats here?
Yeah, last time I looked, the D-backs were the third highest on stack on the slate, and obviously makes sense because we both nearly vomited thinking about playing Senzatella. But it's maybe a stack that I cut corners and just isolate three guys. I think Cattell or Alec Thomas, Cattell Marte, Christian Walker, Dalton Varsho, guys that would probably lead the charge for me. Another, I think Varsho's outfield eligible, but another 2-catcher lineup. Christian Walker is somebody I would probably keep an eye on here. Senzatella, just a 12% K rate to righties. Christian Walker, if you can neutralize, his propensity to miss bats, he does have a ton of power. And in that cleanup spot, if he gets a couple ducks on the pond, he might have a solid opportunity to put up big numbers, maybe a bomb.
Yep. Yeah. And I tell you what, 2,900 is just too cheap for him. 25 home runs this season. I get FanDuel pricing people that he's only hitting 199 if you like batting average for some reason, but 25 home runs, 245 ISO. These are more the numbers we care about with these power hitters and these DFS spots. So I do think that's a good spot. He's too cheap. He's too low on there. Let's move on from this one. We've got less than 10 minutes and 2 games left. Pods and the Dodgers. Pods with Mike Clevenger on the hill. Good pitcher going up against the deadly Dodgers lineup. Andrew Heaney going for the Dodgers. Kind of similar story now with the Padres' improved lineup here. So are you going to either one of these pitchers? They're both very low owned given the matchups, and the prices are, fine. Maybe Haney's a little expensive for his talent, but that price on Clevenger is actually pretty good. Is there any appeal there, or are the lineups just too good?
I'm gonna sit this one out on both pitchers. One of those, if you did it, I wouldn't talk it down, but Heaney, I have trust issues, right? Like we've been there. And this Padres lineup, man, a lot changes in 7 days. Terry, 7 days ago, I don't stack the Padres. I played Manny Machado. Now for the rest of the season, especially when Tatis comes back, Padres might be my most stacked team to close out the year.
Yeah, no joke. I mean, they just absolutely changed the face of this entire team. So you've got Josh Bell in there. You've got Brandon Drury in there. I mean, it's just a totally different and much more effective lineup, not to mention, of course, Juan Soto hitting second. So dynamite spot. They're getting a little bit of attention, but it's not crazy. It's primarily around Soto and Manny Machado. Are you going to any pod stacks here against Heaney, who we've both seen get blown up, but we both know has an effective strikeout rate when he's going right? So is it a spot where you're attacking these pitchers with some bats?
Yes, absolutely. I will probably stack. Heaney is probably in mad bum territory where I'm just going to stack against him for the rest of the time.
Okay.
But I will concede that, yeah, he's looked, like maybe they found something in him. But again, this Padres team, even if it's against, a lefty that is a little bit more established long-term, this is a really good lineup. And these games will mean a lot down the stretch. Padres and Dodgers is going to be playoff games every time out. So I certainly... I'm in on that. I expect aggressive base running in both ways. So yes, on the Padres stack.
Okay. And then on the Dodger side of things, presumably, fairly similar answer. They're getting a little bit more attention on both sites. Are you above or below the field on Dodger stacks?
So we got the Dodgers at 7% owned. I'm at 8%, so I guess slightly above. Wait, let me see the Dodgers. Yeah, I'm at 8%.
Okay. Are there specific bats in there that you really like more than others? It's a lineup that plays for sure for me 1 through 9. And I think it's kind of been the case all year long. There are some low owned buried bats toward the bottom of the lineup that can absolutely hit you a home run any given day. And they added Joey Gallo to that mix, our old pal. So it's really weird and interesting down bottom. You're probably not going to get a great game out of all of them, but one of them could give you a great game on any given slate. So are you like trying to grab some of the lower owned guys, or are you just kind of going to the top and not worrying about it?
Mookie, Trey, Freeman are the highest concentrated ownership,
sure.
But man, the day Joey Gallo and Heaney win a tournament is going to be a rough day for me. Holy cow.
I have probably a little bit too much Joey Gallo still in my life. He's coming up a little bit in this model here as I'm doing this sort in the last couple of minutes. But for me, it's the back end there, but I no disagreement whatsoever. If you've got infinite money and the ability to put them in your lineup, absolutely you want to go Mookie, Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman up at the top, and then grab any 1 or 2 other guys that you want from this lineup. Last game on deck, 5 minutes left. Just going to make it. The Angels and the Mariners. This game also not on the FanDuel slate. The Angels throwing Reed Detmers, the lefty, at the Mariners, who are answering back with Chris Flexen. Both pitchers in the 8,000 range on DK. Minimal ownership in the single digits on both sides. Any love for either pitcher?
No, not specifically. you're starting to see a little bit of life in Detmers in terms of strikeout ability. 19% swinging strike rate in that last game. Has been above 10% in 4 games straight, including a game against the Braves and the Astros. And that's a little closer to what they expected him to be coming out of the minors. But I'm still, a trust issue guy, and I still have respect for this Mariners lineup. 110 WRC plus against lefties on the season. So I'm gonna keep watching from afar on both these pitchers.
All right. So then I assume that might lead into some shares of these bats. They're not overly popular. I prefer the Mariners lineup. We've seen this Angels lineup be pretty bad from time to time. Obviously, we've got Shohei Ohtani in that lineup. Jared Walsh is decent in terms of the power upside. Taylor Ward can give you a good game here and there, mostly in the beginning of the season, but he's still in the lineup, somewhat capable. Outside of that, kind of an ugly lineup. I prefer the Mariners side. What are you doing with these with the bats on both sides of this one?
Yeah, we don't have to give up a ton here. Seattle is coming in at 4% owned, a little bit above our top stack percentage. But like I said, that they're well above league average against lefties. And this Angels bullpen doesn't scare me. And they did trade away Raisel Iglesias, so we might get a quality 8 to 9 innings here. And they don't strike out a ton either. So I do think if I had to handpick a few guys to be the guys, Ty France, Kyle Lewis, Eugenio Suarez are the 3. And Suarez specifically, if we do get some regression for Detmer's strikeout rate, 22% on the year against righties, and we've seen him struggle to throw strikes against them, Suarez can maybe neutralize that 33% carry rate against lefties and, tap into that power that we know he has.
Yeah, love Suarez. He's been a fixture in my DFS lineups throughout the season. He's on my old Dynasty team that I talk about there. So love that power upside. For Dynasty, he's got multi-position eligibility for me too at third base and shortstop on Yahoo. If it sounded like I was stalling there, I was, because I had to drop the lineups in. We've also got Kyle Lewis, who I bring up from time to time, 2,900 in the 6th spot in that lineup, or in the projected lineup anyway. Is it? Sorry, I didn't realize I had the projected up. Let me jump over and talk about the actual lineup, which I don't have. All right. If Kyle Lewis is in the game, are you interested in him?
Yeah, I think I have him in the lineup. I haven't bet. Oh, no, it's projected.
It's still projected, yeah.
All right. I had him projected. Oh, actually, Mitch Haniger might be back.
He's in the projected as well. That's a good call there too. Obviously a great, excellent power upside bat in the middle of that lineup to get to if he's in the 3 spot in that lineup too. So yet another enhancement to that lineup. Starting to look pretty good out there.
Yeah. Mitch Haniger is a big addition. And if Kyle Lewis and Mitch Haniger are in the lineup, and Lewis would be a little bit lower in that probably 6, 7, something like that. Yeah, it just becomes that much deeper. Yeah.
And I mentioned Lewis because nice, cheap price, super talented kid who he's blown out his knee 2 or 3 times in his career through the minors. But his original track was supposed to be one of these like superstar caliber players. And he can deliver from time to time. 32.4% hard hit isn't impressing anybody, but the 10.8% barrel rate interests me. 3 home runs and 57 plate appearances, not doing anything else to distinguish himself. But I do think when he's in the lineup for cheap, for no ownership, he's a little bit interesting. So let's talk real quick. Home run pick first.
I need 200 likes, Terry. Gosh dang, bro. What are we doing? 181?
Come on. I mean, we haven't been haranguing anybody out there for these likes. We kind of trust our audience now that they're going to get
a chat. Then they'd come and do this.
Chat, do not make me get on.
Minute. Now we just wasted the last minute instead of giving home run picks.
I know. And
do not make me get on this God mic. I will get on this God mic and yell at you, chat. I will do it. Do not make me do it.
He's going to do it. All right. I trust they're going to get there for us. So who's your home run pick? And then who's your home run pick that's not on the San Francisco
Giants? So I guess my highest green guy in the bond detector is going to be Brandon Drury.
Ooh, okay. I like that one. If I'm going non-Giant, it is these are cheesy and chalky. Juan Soto or Vladdy Guerrero. I'll go Hunter Renfroe again. I used him yesterday. I'll grab him again. He's floating there in like the 8 or 9 spot, but it is all Giants up top for me. Brandon Belt leading the way. Jock Peterson too. Favorite stack on this slate, even though we're basically at lock.
Man, I think it's the Giants, right? If the whole entire team breaks the model, man, I gotta be there.
Seems like a sharp call to me. I like that a lot, and I'll be there for sure. Just dropped my lineups in before and made sure I had a bunch of them in there. Favorite pitcher overall on this slate?
Carlos Rodon. I wish we would have got him at the buzzer, man.
Yeah. I was hoping on that one. That was that would have been one that I think maybe pushed them over the top. But Instead, we traded away a capable lefty.
We got to get rid of IKF, call up Oswaldo Peraza. My man is literally Barry Bonds of AAA. What are we doing?
Sign for that right now.
Yeah.
Anything to get IKF out of here. They should have just packed him in Joey Gallo's bag and sent them to LA. Not told anybody. All right, guys, that was fun. We've had a blast talking baseball with you guys. Gun, before I knock out the schedule, tell the people where they can find you.
Twitter, YouTube /GunDacker. Let's go.
There you go. We've had producer Tyler behind the virtual glass this whole time. You guys heard him on the Voice of God a minute ago. We have no more shows coming up at Stokastic today, but tomorrow, 12:15 in the early afternoon /morning, I'll be here for the MLB Live Before Lock. Me and Aton, 12:15 to 1:45. Long show. Fun. That'll be a good one. And then following that, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., we've got NASCAR Live Before Lock with Mr. Floyd and Mr. Pennell. So that'll be a great show if you're playing the racy cars. Should be a lot of fun. Guys, hit the like, hit the subscribe. We appreciate everybody hanging out with us tonight. It's been a lot of fun. And good luck. We're out of here.